Hi, this is Walt Mossberg, the technology columnist for the Wall Street Journal, and today I want to talk to you about something you take for granted, which is the hard disk drive in your computer. The hard disk, which seems to have been with us forever, is under challenge suddenly by a new kind of storage device called a solid-state drive that some laptop makers are beginning to ship in selected models. Now, the hard disk is a mechanical device. It has moving parts. It records your data on a spinning platter that is driven by a motor. The solid-state drive is not a mechanical device and it has no moving parts. It records your data onto a special kind of memory chip that is a cousin to the memory chips you're used to in digital cameras and MP3 players. This gives the solid-state drive some advantages over the hard disk. Number one, it's faster. Number two, it uses less battery power. Number three, it's quieter. And number four, it's less likely to have the kind of failure that we're all aware of can happen with hard disks. But there are two downsides to the solid-state disk, at least in its early incarnation here as it's being rolled out in laptops. One is it has limited capacity, at least the first models do. At the moment, you can only buy them in laptops with a 64 gigabyte SSD capacity, and that's much below what you normally would expect in hard disks. Secondly, the price premium is quite considerable if you want to go from a hard disk model of the very same machine to an SSD model. The best recent example is the new Apple MacBook Air ultra-thin laptop. In that machine, the hard disk model stores 80 gigabytes and costs $1,800. The SSD model only stores 64 gigabytes but costs $1,000 more. In my column this week, I tested the hard disk versus the SSD model of the Apple, and also the hard disk versus the SSD model of another well-known sub-notebook, the Toshiba Portage R500, which runs Windows XP. The SSD model on that Toshiba is about $700 more than the hard disk model, and it also only has 64 gigabytes. In my tests, I found that there were improvements in battery life and there were improvements in speed, but my judgment is that those improvements for most users are not good enough to justify the kind of large premium and limited capacity that we now are facing as the SSD comes onto the scene. Samsung, which makes the SSD in both the Toshiba and the Apple that I tested, has already announced a new model which will have twice the capacity and a lower cost per gigabyte. So you can already see the usual trend developing of greater capacity and lower cost that has characterized almost all digital products. So here's my recommendation. If you're someone who spends a lot of time worrying about the failure of a hard disk and the loss of data, if that's hugely important to you, and you're willing to live with lower capacity, it may be worth spending all that extra money for an SSD because your data will probably be much less likely to be lost. But if you're a mainstream user and you're not going around worried about that all the time, my advice is to wait as the inevitable curves occur, which will drive down the cost and increase the capacity of the new solid-state drives. Thanks, this is Walt Mossberg, and I'll see you next week.